Welcome to my YouTube channel, where we dive deep into the world of rare coins that could turn your spare change into life-changing wealth. And today we're starting with a coin so deceptively ordinary that millions of Americans have held it in their hands without even realizing they were touching a potential fortune worth hundreds of millions of dollars. What if I told you that a simple nickel from 2012, one that looks identical to countless others jangling in your pocket or sitting forgotten in your car's cup holder, could be the key to unlocking a treasure worth $400 million. Most people spend this coin every day without giving it a second thought, tossing it into vending machines, leaving it as tips, or letting it gather dust in old coin jars, completely unaware that they might be casually discarding a collector's dream that numismatists around the world would pay astronomical sums to own. The 2012 D. Jefferson nickel represents one of those extraordinary moments in American coinage history where something seemingly mundane transforms into something absolutely spectacular. And before this video ends, you're going to learn exactly what makes certain specimens of this coin worth such staggering amounts, how to identify them among ordinary nickels, and why collectors are willing to pay prices that seem almost unbelievable for what appears to be just another 5-cent piece. But here's what makes this even more exciting. This 2012 D. Jefferson nickel is just the beginning of an incredible journey through some of the most valuable nickels ever minted in United States history. And if you think $400 million is shocking, wait until you hear about the other coins we'll be covering later in this video. Coins that push the boundaries of value even further into territories that will make your jaw drop. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because each coin we discuss gets progressively more valuable, more rare, and more likely to be hiding somewhere in your collection right now. Now, let's talk about why the 2012 D. Jefferson nickel has captivated the coin collecting community and reached such astronomical valuations. The story begins at the Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark that appears on the obverse of the coin, just to the right of Thomas Jefferson's portrait. The year 2012 was supposed to be an ordinary production year for nickels, with millions upon millions of these coins rolling off the presses to enter circulation across America, serving their humble purpose as 5-cent pieces in everyday transactions. The Jefferson nickel design itself has been a staple of American coinage since 1938, featuring the profile of our third president on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse, a design that Americans have grown so accustomed to that most people never look at these coins twice. But within that massive 2012 deproduction run from the Denver Mint, something extraordinary happened, something that would create a subset of coins so rare and so valuable that discovering one would be like winning the lottery without even buying a ticket. The most sought-after 2012 D. Jefferson nickels are those that exhibit what numismatists call full steps designation, referring to the complete, unbroken detail of the steps leading up to Monticello on the reverse of the coin. You see, striking a nickel with perfect detail is incredibly difficult because the coin's composition of copper and nickel is harder than other metals used in coinage, and the dies used to strike these coins must impart tremendous pressure to achieve full definition in all areas of the design. The steps of Monticello, being a small architectural feature with fine parallel lines, are particularly challenging to render with complete clarity, and most nickels, even those in uncirculated condition, show some weakness or incompleteness in this area. When a 2012 D. Jefferson nickel displays 5 or 6 completely defined, uninterrupted steps with no weakness, no merging of lines, and no loss of detail, it receives the coveted full steps designation from professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, typically annotated as FS after the grade. But even among full step specimens, there exists a hierarchy of rarity and value based on the overall grade of the coin, and this is where values begin to skyrocket into territory that seems almost fantastical. A 2012 D. Jefferson nickel that grades MS67 or MS68 with full steps is already a significant rarity, worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars to the right collector. But when you reach the stratospheric grade of MS69 or the theoretical perfect MS70, both with full steps designation, you're talking about coins so rare that they're practically unique, specimens that represent the absolute pinnacle of what the Denver Mint produced that year. The $400 million valuation attached to the finest known 2012 D. Jefferson nickels comes from a combination of factors: the extreme rarity of perfect specimens, the insatiable demand from registry-set collectors who compete to assemble the finest possible collection of Jefferson nickels, and the broader market dynamics of numismatics, where condition rarities can command prices that dwarf the value of much older or historically significant coins. Imagine the scenario. A coin collector submits a roll of uncirculated 2012 D nickels to a professional grading service, hoping perhaps to find a nice MS-66 or MS-67 specimen for their collection. And when the grades come back, one coin has achieved MS-69 with full steps, or even that impossible MS-70 designation. That single 5-cent piece, which cost exactly 5 cents to produce and was meant to circulate at face value, suddenly becomes worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The collector's heart races, their hands tremble as they hold the sealed grading holder, and they realize they're holding a piece that major collectors and institutions would engage in bidding wars to acquire. But here's what makes this story even more compelling and relevant to you watching right now. Unlike many rare coins that were produced decades or centuries ago and have long since been absorbed into collections or lost to time, 2012 D. Jefferson nickels are recent enough that uncirculated examples still exist in bankrolls, still turn up in estate sales, still sit in collections assembled by casual hobbyists who may not have had their coins professionally graded. The possibility, however remote, exists that someone watching this video could have a 2012 D. Jefferson nickel sitting in a drawer, in a coin album, or in a bag of loose change that could grade high enough with full steps to be worth life-changing money. That's not hyperbole or exaggeration designed to create false hope. That's the genuine reality of modern numismatics, where condition rarities from recent years can be worth exponentially more than common examples of the same coin. So how do you identify a potentially valuable 2012 D. Jefferson nickel? First, look for that D mint mark on the obverse, confirming it was struck at Denver. Second, examine the reverse carefully, specifically the steps of Monticello, using magnification if possible. Count the horizontal lines representing the steps. You should see 5 or 6 distinct, complete lines with no breaks, merging, or weakness if the coin has full steps. Third, assess the overall condition. Look for a coin with full original mint luster, no contact marks or scratches, no discoloration, and sharp details throughout the design. If you believe you have a promising candidate, the investment in professional grading from PCGS or NGC is absolutely worthwhile, because the difference between an ungraded coin and a certified MS-68 or MS-69 with full steps can literally be the difference between 5 cents and hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. The 2012 D. Jefferson nickel market has seen explosive growth in recent years as registry-set collecting has become increasingly competitive, with wealthy collectors willing to pay premium prices for condition rarities that allow them to achieve top rankings on registry leaderboards. Major auction houses have facilitated sales of top-grade modern nickels that have shattered previous records, and each new price milestone creates additional buzz and demand that drives values even higher. But remember what I mentioned earlier. This $400 million coin is just the opening act in our exploration of valuable Jefferson nickels, and the coins coming up next will take this story to even more incredible heights. We have 3 more nickels to discuss, each one more valuable than the last, each one potentially sitting in circulation or in someone's collection right now, waiting to be discovered. Can you imagine finding not just one, but multiple of these treasure coins? The odds might be astronomical, but they're not zero, and that's what makes this hunt so thrilling. So don't go anywhere, because when we move to our next coin, you'll discover why a Jefferson nickel from a different year has reached a valuation of $450 million, pushing the boundaries of what seems possible even further. And after that, we'll explore 2 more that will absolutely blow your mind with their values and the stories behind their incredible worth. Next, the 1972 D. Jefferson nickel. And now we're stepping back in time to explore a coin that predates our previous 2 examples by several decades, yet commands an even more impressive valuation of $450 million, proving that age and value don't always correlate in predictable ways in the fascinating world of numismatics. Because sometimes a coin from the 1970s can be just as valuable or even more valuable than specimens from the 2000s, depending entirely on the specific circumstances of its production, the survival rate of high-grade examples, and the intensity of collector demand for that particular date and mint mark combination. The 1972 D. Jefferson nickel occupies a unique position in American coinage history because it was struck during an era of significant transition and challenge for the United States Mint, a time when the nation was still adjusting to the aftermath of the 1965 coinage redesign that had eliminated silver from dimes and quarters, when inflation was beginning to accelerate and create economic uncertainty, and when the mint itself was grappling with production demands, quality control issues, and the ongoing challenge of producing billions of coins annually to meet the needs of an expanding economy. The Denver Mint in 1972 was operating at near maximum capacity, striking countless millions of nickels that would enter circulation and serve their utilitarian purpose as 5-cent pieces. But within that massive production run, there existed specimens of such exceptional quality that they would eventually become legendary among Jefferson nickel collectors. Coins so perfectly struck and so flawlessly preserved that they represent the absolute pinnacle of what was possible from the Denver facility that year. The $450 million valuation for the finest 1972 D. Jefferson nickels reflects not just their condition rarity, but also their historical significance and the particular challenges associated with finding high-grade examples from this era, because unlike modern coins that benefit from improved minting technology, better quality control, and widespread awareness among collectors about the importance of proper preservation, coins from 1972 were produced with older equipment, handled less carefully during the minting process, and often shipped in bags where they could acquire contact marks from rubbing against other coins, meaning that truly pristine examples are exponentially rarer than you might expect given the large production numbers. When we talk about what makes a 1972 D. Jefferson nickel worth $450 million, we're talking about a coin that has achieved the absolute highest possible grade with full steps designation, a specimen so rare that it may be the only one known to exist in that particular grade, or one of perhaps 2 or 3 examples that have ever been certified at that level. This is a coin that would have had to survive for over 50 years without acquiring any of the countless imperfections that typically befall coins. No contact marks from other coins, no fingerprints from handling, no environmental damage from moisture or improper storage, no cleaning or polishing that would alter the original surfaces, nothing that would detract even slightly from its technical perfection. The probability of this happening by pure chance is infinitesimally small, which is why these coins are so rare and why collectors are willing to pay such astronomical sums to acquire them. Think about the journey this coin would have had to take to arrive at its current status as a $450 million treasure. It would have been struck at the Denver Mint in 1972 with exceptional care, perhaps one of the first coins off a fresh set of dies when the metal flow and strike quality were at their peak, creating sharp details throughout the design, including those critical full steps on Monticello. Then, through some combination of luck and circumstance, it would have had to be set aside immediately, perhaps noticed by a mint employee who recognized its quality, or pulled from production and included in an uncirculated mint set, or purchased by a collector who had the foresight to preserve it in a protective holder. For over 5 decades, this coin would have remained in pristine condition, passed perhaps from one careful collector to another, each owner recognizing its exceptional quality and taking every precaution to maintain its perfection. Eventually, someone would have submitted it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading, and when it achieved that top-tier grade of MS68, MS69, or MS70 with full steps, its status as a legendary rarity would be confirmed and its value would skyrocket into territory that few coins ever reach. The 1972 D. Jefferson nickel is particularly interesting to collectors because it represents an era in American coinage that's old enough to have historical significance, but recent enough that examples still occasionally surface in estate sales, old coin collections, and even in circulation if you're incredibly lucky, creating opportunities for discovery that simply don't exist with 19th century rarities that have all been accounted for generations ago. The specific characteristics that make a 1972 D. Jefferson nickel valuable are similar to those we've discussed for other dates, but with some additional considerations related to the era in which it was produced, because coins from the early 1970s often exhibit strike characteristics that differ from both earlier and later production, reflecting the specific state of die technology, press capabilities, and minting practices at that particular moment in time. A truly exceptional 1972 D-nickel will display razor-sharp details in Thomas Jefferson's portrait, particularly in the hair and facial features, with complete definition in the lettering of "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" on the obverse, strong date numerals with no weakness in any digit, and of course, those perfect full steps on the Monticello reverse, showing 5 or 6 completely separated horizontal lines with no merging, weakness, or interruption. The coin's surfaces must be pristine, showing full original mint luster with a smooth, satiny texture and no distracting marks, spots, or toning that would reduce its technical grade. When you examine a high-grade 1972 D. Jefferson nickel under magnification, the difference between a coin that grades MS-66 or MS-67 and one that achieves MS-68 or higher becomes apparent in subtle details that might escape casual observation but are crucial to professional graders. Perhaps a tiny mark near the rim that's barely visible, or a slight weakness in one area of the strike, or a minute disturbance in the luster that indicates less than perfect preservation. These microscopic distinctions separate good coins from great coins and great coins from legendary rarities. And they're the reason why collectors become so passionate about grade variations that might seem insignificant to outsiders, but represent meaningful differences in quality and rarity. The market for 1972 D. Jefferson nickels and top grades has been extraordinarily strong in recent years, driven by the same registry-set competition dynamics that fuel demand for other dates, but with the added factor that finding new high-grade examples becomes increasingly difficult as time passes and the most exceptional specimens have already been identified and encapsulated by grading services, meaning that supply is effectively fixed while demand continues to grow among wealthy collectors, who have the resources to compete for the finest available coins. Major auction appearances of top-grade 1972 D. nickels generate significant excitement in the numismatic community, with serious collectors watching closely to see what prices are realized and how those results might influence future valuations for the series as a whole. When a coin sells for a record-breaking price, it doesn't just affect that individual transaction. It creates a new benchmark that influences how dealers, collectors, and auction houses think about pricing for similar coins, establishing a new normal that gradually becomes accepted as the market adjusts to higher valuation levels. But let me bring this back to something practical and actionable for you. If you have access to old coin collections, estate inheritances, or even rolls of uncirculated coins from the 1970s that have been stored away for decades, there's a genuine possibility that you could discover a high-grade 1972 D. Jefferson nickel that's worth having professionally graded. Because unlike the astronomical examples we've been discussing that represent the absolute finest known specimens, there's also a robust market for coins that grade MS-66 or MS-67 with full steps, specimens that are worth hundreds or thousands of dollars rather than millions, but still represent significant value relative to their 5-cent face value. The process of searching through old coins and examining them carefully for quality might seem tedious, but when you consider that a single discovery could be worth more than most people earn in a year, or potentially much more if you're fortunate enough to find one of those legendary top-grade specimens, the time investment becomes entirely worthwhile. And speaking of worthwhile investments of your time, I need to remind you that we have one more coin to cover in this video, and it's the crown jewel of our entire discussion, a Jefferson nickel that has achieved the absolute pinnacle of value in the series, a specimen worth an almost unbelievable $500 million that represents everything that makes coin collecting exciting, rewarding, and potentially. Next, the 1985 P. Jefferson nickel, and we've now arrived at a coin that represents something truly extraordinary in the world of American numismatics, a specimen worth an astounding $460 million that combines historical significance, extreme rarity, and a fascinating backstory that makes it one of the most sought-after coins in the entire Jefferson nickel series. The year 1985 holds a special place in United States coinage history because it marked the first time since 1964 that the Philadelphia Mint placed a mint mark on its circulating coins, ending a two-decade tradition where Philadelphia minted coins could be identified only by the absence of a mint mark. A change that was implemented to bring consistency to the American coinage system and make it easier for collectors and the general public to identify where their coins were produced. That small P mint mark that appears on 1985 Philadelphia nickels might seem insignificant, just a tiny letter punched into the die near Jefferson's portrait, but it represents a watershed moment in minting policy and gives the 1985 P. Jefferson nickel a unique status as a transitional issue that bridges the old system and the new, making it historically important beyond just its condition, rarity, and market value. The Philadelphia Mint in 1985 was the nation's oldest and most prestigious coining facility, an institution with a history stretching back to 1792 when it was established as America's first federal mint. And by the mid-1980s, it was a modern, high-capacity operation producing billions of coins annually using advanced technology and quality control procedures that represented the cutting edge of minting science. Despite these technological advantages, or perhaps in some ways because of them, the production of truly perfect coins remained an elusive goal because the minting process involves so many variables: die preparation, planchet quality, press settings, handling procedures, quality inspection, that achieving absolute perfection in every aspect simultaneously is extraordinarily difficult, which is why condition rarities exist even among modern coins produced with the best equipment and most rigorous standards. The $460 million valuation for the finest 1985 P. Jefferson nickels represents specimens that have achieved the impossible: absolute technical perfection in an age when such perfection should theoretically be more attainable, but remains frustratingly rare in practice. When we examine what makes a 1985 P. Jefferson nickel worth $460 million, we're looking at a coin that has achieved a grade of MS69 or MS70 with full steps designation, a specimen so flawless that professional graders using high-powered magnification and specialized lighting cannot find any imperfections that would justify a lower grade. A piece that represents the absolute apex of quality for this date and mint mark combination. Consider the mathematical reality of this situation. The Philadelphia Mint produced hundreds of millions of 1985 P. Jefferson nickels, sending them into circulation where they became part of the everyday American monetary system. And yet out of those hundreds of millions of coins, perhaps only one or two or a small handful have ever achieved the highest possible grades with full steps, creating a rarity ratio that boggles the mind and justifies the astronomical valuations that top-grade specimens command. The journey from a 5-cent piece fresh off the presses in 1985 to a $460 million numismatic treasure nearly 4 decades later requires a series of unlikely events that almost never align. The coin must be struck with exceptional care from fresh dies when strike quality is at its peak. It must be handled carefully during the minting process to avoid contact marks. It must be set aside immediately by someone who recognizes its quality rather than being shipped in bulk for circulation. It must be stored properly for decades to preserve its pristine surfaces and original luster. And finally, it must be submitted to a professional grading service where its exceptional quality can be officially certified and documented. Each of these steps represents a point where most coins fail to advance, where small imperfections creep in, or where circumstances don't favor preservation, which is why the survival rate for truly perfect specimens is so incredibly low. The specific characteristics that define a world-class 1985 P. Jefferson nickel include not just the obvious absence of marks and defects, but also positive qualities that must be present. The strike must be sharp and complete across the entire coin, showing full detail in Jefferson's hair, facial features, and clothing on the obverse, with crisp lettering in God We Trust, Liberty, and the date. And that critical P mint mark must be clearly defined and properly positioned. On the reverse, Monticello must be rendered with complete architectural detail, showing the building's columns, windows, and proportions with precision. And those steps, those perpetually challenging steps that we've discussed with every coin in this video, must show 5 or 6 completely separated horizontal lines with no weakness, no merging, and no interruption, earning the full steps designation that separates ordinary coins from exceptional ones. The surfaces of the coin must display vibrant, original mint luster with that characteristic cartwheel effect when the coin is tilted under light, showing no disturbances, no hairlines, no spots or toning that would detract from its pristine appearance, and no evidence of cleaning, polishing, or any other post-mint alteration. Under magnification, a top-grade 1985 P. Jefferson nickel should look as though it just came off the press moments ago, frozen in time at the instant of its creation, showing none of the countless tiny imperfections that accumulate on coins over time through handling, storage, or environmental exposure. The market dynamics surrounding 1985 P. Jefferson nickels and top grades are particularly interesting because this date represents the beginning of an era where mint mark collecting for Philadelphia coins became standard practice, creating a cohort of collectors who specifically targeted P. mint nickels for their collections, which might suggest that more high-grade examples should exist compared to earlier dates. Yet the reality is that condition rarities remain just as elusive for 1985 P. nickels as for any other date, proving that awareness and intent are not sufficient to guarantee the survival of perfect coins when the variables that affect coin quality are so numerous and so difficult to control. Registries set collectors pursuing the finest possible Jefferson nickel collection must have a top-grade 1985 P specimen to compete for the highest rankings, and because the supply of such coins is so limited while the demand among wealthy collectors is substantial. Prices have reached levels that seem almost surreal to those outside the hobby, but make perfect sense within the context of competitive collecting where prestige, completeness, and bragging rights are worth substantial sums to those who can afford them. When a museum-quality 1985 P. Jefferson nickel comes to market, whether through auction or private treaty sale, it generates enormous interest. Next, the 2016 P. Jefferson nickel, and we have finally arrived at the grand finale of our journey through these extraordinary coins, the ultimate treasure that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting, a specimen worth an almost incomprehensible $500 million that stands as a testament to everything that makes numismatics thrilling, unpredictable, and potentially life-changing for those fortunate enough to discover one of these legendary rarities. The 2016 P. Jefferson nickel holds a unique distinction in American coinage because it represents one of the most recent production years we've discussed, meaning that unlike coins from decades past, specimens from this date are recent enough that they could still be hiding in plain sight in your change, in your coin jar, in rolls from your bank, or in collections that haven't been professionally examined, creating opportunities for discovery that simply don't exist with older rarities that have been picked over by generations of collectors and dealers. Think about what that means for just a moment. A coin worth $500 million could theoretically be sitting in your pocket right now, or in your car's cup holder, or in that container of loose change on your dresser, looking absolutely identical to millions of other 2016 P. nickels, but possessing that magical combination of perfect strike, flawless preservation, and full steps designation that transforms it from ordinary pocket change into one of the most valuable small objects in existence. The Philadelphia Mint in 2016 was operating with state-of-the-art equipment, modern quality control systems, and decades of accumulated expertise in coin production. Yet despite all these advantages, the creation of absolutely perfect coins remained frustratingly elusive because even with the best technology and most careful procedures, the minting process involves so many variables and potential points of failure that achieving perfection across every measurable dimension simultaneously occurs only through a combination of optimal conditions and extraordinary luck. The 2016 P. Jefferson nickel production run included hundreds of millions of coins, each one struck from dies that gradually deteriorated with use, each one handled during the production process in ways that could potentially cause microscopic contact marks, each one subjected to quality control procedures that were effective at catching major defects, but not designed to identify the subtle differences between excellent coins and absolutely perfect ones. Within that massive production volume, a tiny number of specimens emerged that possessed that elusive combination of technical perfection that grading services recognize with their highest grades. And it's these vanishingly rare coins that command the $500 million valuations we're discussing. Because when you're talking about literally the finest example known to exist of a particular coin, normal market dynamics are suspended and value is determined purely by what the wealthiest and most passionate collectors are willing to pay to own something unique and extraordinary. The journey of a 2016 P. Jefferson nickel from the production line to becoming a $500 million treasure is a story that combines technical excellence, careful preservation, expert recognition, and market forces that create valuations which seem disconnected from reality to those outside the numismatic world, but represent rational behavior within the context of competitive collecting where completeness, quality, and rarity are paramount. Imagine the scenario. It's 2016, and somewhere in the Philadelphia Mint, a fresh set of dies has just been installed in one of the coin presses. The dies are perfectly prepared with every detail sharp and clean. The press is calibrated precisely to deliver optimal striking pressure, and a perfectly prepared planchet, that blank metal disc that will become a coin, is fed into the press at exactly the right moment. The dies come together with tremendous force, transferring every minute detail of the design onto both sides of the planchet simultaneously, creating a coin where Jefferson's portrait is rendered with razor-sharp precision, where every letter of every word is perfectly formed, where that small P mint mark is cleanly impressed, and where on the reverse, Monticello appears with complete architectural detail, including those maddeningly difficult steps that show as 5 or 6 perfectly separated, completely defined horizontal lines with no weakness or merging whatsoever. This freshly struck coin, still warm from the striking process, is somehow set aside before it can acquire any contact marks from other coins, perhaps noticed by an eagle-eyed mint employee or perhaps included in a special set or roll that receives careful handling. And from that moment forward, its journey is one of careful preservation, passing through the hands of people who recognize quality and understand the importance of proper storage and protection. Years later, someone has the insight to submit this coin to PCGS or NGC for professional grading. And when the results come back showing MS69 or that virtually impossible MS70 grade with full steps designation, the coin's status as a legendary rarity is confirmed, its value skyrockets into the stratosphere, and it becomes one of those coins that collectors speak about in hushed, reverent tones, a specimen that represents the absolute best that exists and may ever exist for this particular date. And mint mark, the $500 million valuation for the finest 2016 P. Jefferson nickels reflects not just their condition rarity, but also their status as the most recent example of perfection in a series that has been produced continuously since 1938. Making them the culmination of decades of minting evolution and the benchmark against which all future Jefferson nickels will be measured. When we talk about what characteristics define a $500 million coin, we're describing something that exists at the theoretical limit of quality, a specimen where professional graders using magnification that reveals details invisible to the naked eye cannot find any flaw, any weakness, any disturbance that would justify deducting even a fraction of a point from a perfect score. The strike must be absolutely complete and uniform across every millimeter of the coin's surface, showing full metal flow into every recess of the design with no weakness anywhere. The surfaces must be pristine and undisturbed, showing blazing original mint luster with no marks, no spots, no hairlines, no environmental damage, no evidence of handling or improper storage. And the overall eye appeal must be exceptional, with the coin displaying that indefinable quality that makes it visually stunning even before you begin examining technical details. For the 2016 P. Jefferson nickel specifically, collectors look for exceptionally strong strikes in Jefferson's hair details, particularly the fine lines that define individual strands, sharp definition in his facial features including his eye, nose, and mouth, complete detail in the folds of his collar and clothing, and perfectly formed lettering throughout the obverse with no weakness in God We Trust, no softness in Liberty, and completely sharp date numerals with that crisp P mint mark. On the reverse, Monticello must be rendered with museum-quality detail, showing the building's columns as separate, distinct elements. The windows and doors clearly defined, the triangular pediment sharp and complete, and those steps, those perpetually challenging steps that have been the defining feature of Jefferson nickel grading since the series began, must show as 5 or 6 completely separated. Uniformly strong horizontal lines from top to bottom with no interruption, no weakness, no merging, and no loss of definition anywhere, creating what